One thing that I forget to say in this video that I was saying now is that the easiest way that I've found to get a oxide for the metal kingdom is to just buy sulfates, or I mean if you can buy carbonates or some other kind of crystalline or alkaline earth form of the mineral you want to work with in a powdered form, of course, and you just calcine that, then eventually that will yield an oxide. It's the same process of calcining, crushing. Depending on the metal, they're a little finicky, and you'll usually get something oxide or oxide enough. Okay, so calcination is essentially reducing something to its ash. We also think of this as its earthly alkaline substance. It's ceramic. These all kind of work. The way you do it is to crush the substance up and then to heat it, usually in open air. So you're kind of baking or cooking or like roasting it. If you can get a metal container, some kind of metal piece of cookware that's steel or stainless steel and can really handle a lot of heat, aluminium will probably break if you use that after a while. Like something like a pan or a dish, and you put your material onto it and you heat it, and then what you do is you take it off the heat, being very careful, of course. Maybe allow it to cool if you need to, and you'll crush it up again using a mortar and pestle. Also, a very strong grinder can work as well. Usually you'd use a grinder to grind it up first, actually, if it was like a herbal material. And then later on you use a pestle and mortar, and you can sift your material, and then you can put it back on the heat, on your pan and on the heat, and allow it to cook again, because as you kind of heat things, it lets you break it up and degrade it more and more and more. And usually things will first blacken, and they'll release their waters and volatile liquids in the form of a white gas, and then their volatile oils as well in the form of smoke. Just a post note, I think it's probably good to mention that this produces a lot of smoke, and depending on what you're doing can smell very awful. So things like fume hoods or doing this in a highly ventilated area, away from people, is recommended. Another post note on safety: certain metallic compounds like sulfates, for example, the stuff they release is not the nicest. Chloride as well probably is not exactly the nicest for your respiratory system, so it can burn out your nose and all the stuff there a little bit if you are too close and you don't you breathe too much of this in. So do be careful when calcining, and after blackening they will start to gray, and they'll lighten more and more as depending on how hot you can get this. Of course, you don't have to have an industrial forge or something to calcine something into a pure white ash, but it can be better, it can be nicer. I believe cement powder is actually an calcined gypsum. So anyway, the end result is essentially a kind of fluffy grey or white powder that is siftable and is very, very fine. That's the end result that we want. Now, the main things that you will calcine in alchemy is that the heaviest things of each reagent class. So post note, it means the densest thing. So the shells of a shellfish is far denser than the meat. For herbal alchemy, this is your wood and bark, because these have the most amount of ashes usually. Of course, anything can be calcined, stems, leaves, flowers, mushrooms, whatever, but usually your heavy things. So it's wood, bark, and sometimes mushrooms as well. For minerals, it's essentially any mineral, though sulfur itself will turn into like a goo, so you generally don't calcine that. Unless you're adding it into something and there's like special reactions, you could do sulfur and potassium nitrate and hydroxides, a bunch of other things, but that's for another video. Minerals are the thing that represents mineral the most. So usually, you will calcine minerals until they're an oxide because it makes them easier to dissolve and work with. Lead you have to be careful with because it will melt. Some metals will melt. I think you can add certain things to them. I'm not sure on this, but I think oxides and carbonates can act as things to help to stop them clumping together. To help calcine it like lead, I'm not sure. And then finally, for animal reagents, mostly shells and bones, anything that can be dried and hardened. These things have a lot of salts, a lot of ashes to them. And then what can we do with these ashes? We can add mineral acids or vinegar or something to create chlorides and acetates and such. You can turn these into carbonates, into hydroxides. You can use them to reduce pH. And traditionally, stones in alchemy, what we call stones, are made by combining the oil of a substance with its ash or its refined ash, which is the salt, sometimes made with water, sometimes other things, and using the volatile liquid, the solvent, sometimes alcohol or mineral spirits or whatever, or acetone, in order to dissolve the oil or the essence and to get it to combine with the oil and the ash. The oil and ash to combine.